Hello dear students, a warm welcome to another live session for AIATS Plus Phase 2 where we discuss the questions where most of you have made mistakes. So, I am Snehil, your zoology faculty, and as the ritual continues, I will be taking up specific topics from the zoology portion since my colleagues have already covered most of the other topics. So, without wasting much time, let us again see the topics which I am going to cover from here onwards, and they are biomolecules, excretory product and their eliminations, locomotion and movement, human health and disease, and evolution. And as I always repeat myself, that biomolecule is one such chapter from where you get the maximum number of questions. So, we will try to focus on this chapter when it comes to solving the question. Alright, and I can see students have joined already. So, a very warm welcome to everyone, and let's begin the discussion now without wasting much time. So, the first question that we have today is question 140. Alright, and as I can read, it pertains to the chapter of biomolecules. So, as I mentioned already, this is one of the most important chapters when it comes to NEET preparation. Alright. Okay, so the question states, all of the following are monosaccharides except. Okay, so when I read the questions and I see the word monosaccharide, it strikes me that we are talking about carbohydrates. All right. So, let us quickly discuss the concept of carbohydrates. So, carbohydrates are basically molecules which are categorized as biomolecules, or I would say macromolecules, and they are composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen in a specific ratio. Alright. So, basically carbohydrates are composed of these three units, and they are also referred to as saccharides, and saccharides basically means sugar. Alright. So, to sum up whatever I said, carbohydrates are basically sugar molecules, and they are categorized into different types based on the number of components present in a carbohydrate molecule. Okay. I can see Sumit Kajal is asking, ma'am, can we receive these questions PDF? I am also a Aakash student. Okay. So, dear Sumit, you need to subscribe or to take up this AIATS Plus test series to get the questions that we are going to discuss here today. Alright. Okay. So, basically depending on the number of components, carbohydrates can be divided into 4 broad categories, which are monosaccharides, disaccharides, then we have the oligosaccharides, and lastly we have the polysaccharides. So, to understand it in a simpler way, all we are going to do is to break these words. Mono का मतलब होता है one. So, basically monosaccharides are carbohydrates in which only a single unit or a single molecule is present, and its example will be glucose, fructose, and coming to disaccharides, again we will break the word and we can figure out that dia means 2. So basically disaccharides are carbohydrates in which 2 molecules of the carbohydrate molecules, 2 of them will be joined together with the help of the specific bond about which we have talked in our previous classes in great detail, and I would like to know the name of that bond from you in the comment section. Okay, so basically disaccharides are carbohydrates in which 2 molecules will be present, and its example include lactose, sucrose, and its examples includes lactose, sucrose and maltose. All right. Coming to oligosaccharides, we say that when we perform hydrolysis, then in oligosaccharides around 3 to 10 molecules of carbohydrates will be obtained. So basically oligosaccharides are carbohydrates which are composed of 3 to 10 molecules of the carbohydrate, whereas when we hydrolyze monosaccharides, it will not be hydrolyzed, to be honest, because obviously it is made of a single molecule. How are you supposed to break it further? It will be hydrolyzed into its smaller components, I would say, कि carbon, hydrogen और oxygen ही बाहर निकल के आएगा. All right. So monosaccharides will not be hydrolyzed, whereas if we hydrolyze disaccharides, 2 different components will be obtained. Coming to then polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are made up of long chains of carbohydrates. All right. And the examples that we have for polysaccharides are starch and cellulose, about which details are given in the NCERT. That starch is the storage component in plants, whereas cellulose act as the, we have cellulose in the wall of the plants, we have glycogen. Glycogen acts as the storage component in animals. So this was the basic division of carbohydrates, which was into monosaccharide, disaccharide, oligosaccharide and polysaccharide. See, we can also see the structure of these carbohydrates. We have our monosaccharides and we have glucose, which is a monosaccharide obviously. Then we have fructose, we have galactose as well, and they are all categorized as monosaccharides. We need to remember these examples so that we can answer questions based on it. All right. Then we can see we have our lactose molecule, and as discussed, it was a disaccharide and it is made up of galactose and glucose molecules, which are joined to each other with the name of the bond which I asked you to comment in the comment section, which is the glycosidic bond. All right. And the other examples that we discussed was sucrose. So sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose, whereas maltose is made up of glucose and glucose. All right. So now let us go back to our question to find out our right answer. So among the options given, I can see that glucose is a monosaccharide, therefore glucose cannot be the right answer. Then we have fructose, which is also a monosaccharide, therefore fructose cannot be the right answer. Then we have lactose, as we saw that it was made up of 2 different carbohydrate molecules, therefore our right answer will be option 3rd, and galactose is also a monosaccharide. All right. So this brings us to the conclusion that lactose is our right answer for this question. Now quickly moving on to our next question, and again it pertains to the chapter of biomolecules, and I can see that It is from the concept of secondary metabolites. So dear students, you may feel that this particular topic from the biomolecule chapter is not important, but our general analysis tells that in every paper of NEET exam right from 2015 onwards, each question of biomolecules has a component of secondary metabolite. Means that किसी भी एक question में एक या तो statement या option is there from this secondary metabolite concept. So this is a very important concept and it seems insignificant, but we should remember it thoroughly. All right. So basically I can see that we need to choose the incorrect match among the given options. Okay. So let us quickly revise the concepts of metabolites. So metabolites are basically formed in our body due to various metabolic processes that are occurring. जैसे breakdown of food हुआ, okay. So all of these processes lead to the formation of energy, or it will provide defense, or there are various developmental processes which are occurring in which these metabolites come into picture. All right. So we have two types of metabolites, which are primary metabolites and the secondary metabolites. Okay, so we have the primary metabolites and the secondary metabolites. And as our NCERT writes that primary metabolites play a major role in the development processes occurring in our body. So we have known roles when we talk about primary metabolites, and primary metabolites can be amino acids, nucleotides, etc. Whereas when we talk about secondary metabolites, it is written that we yet do not know the specific function of secondary metabolite. Like they do not have known roles, but they help us in some or the other way, and they are also said to have ecological importance. All right. And there is a table given for these metabolites, for the secondary metabolites, and this table is taken from the NCERT. It is an example of secondary metabolite, and we can see we have various categories and its examples, and we need to memorize this table so that we can answer a question based on secondary metabolites. The other metabolites which our NCERT mentions are flavonoids, then scents, spices, antibiotics. Now these examples are not mentioned in the table, but you might be asked in the exam, all right. And for the example of anthocyanin, for the example of flavonoids, we have anthocyanin, as anthocyanins are categorized as flavonoids. Also, there was a question in NEET 2019 from the data which is from the names of the secondary metabolites, which is not mentioned in the NCERT. So that is why it is important that you solve your PYQs before finally attempting the paper. All right. So this was in 2019. There was a question asked in which secondary metabolites like nicotine, serotonin and caffeine was said to be produced by plants, and the question was demanding that what is the role of these secondary metabolites in plants, and there were various options like reproductive role and developmental role, but the answer to this question was that these specific secondary metabolites help plant in defense. All right. And this is why our NCERT also writes that secondary metabolites has ecological importance. So you see now that how in plants these secondary metabolites are being produced to provide defense, and this is how we can make out that why our NCERT writes that secondary metabolites has ecological importance. All right. So now we go back to our question to find out our answer. We were supposed to choose the incorrect match. All right. So I can see lectin, concanavalin A is categorized as lectin, which is absolutely right. Therefore, option 1 cannot be our answer. Then we have alkaloids, and it is matched with carotenoids. So if you remember the table, carotenoids are characterized or categorized as pigments, whereas alkaloids will include morphine and codeine. Therefore, our incorrect match is option 2 and the answer that we are looking for. So the other options, which is toxin, which is matched with ricin, and curcumin, which is categorized as drugs, is absolutely right, and therefore these two cannot be the answer. So we conclude that our right answer is option 2, and you can simply solve this question by learning the table. So you can understand that how important it is to explore every corner of the NCERT book. All right. Again, we see our next question, which is from the chapter Biomolecule itself. Okay, so the question reads, the R group in alanine is X, while in serine it is Y. Choose the option that correctly identifies X and Y respectively. So from reading the question, I can make out that here alanine and serine are amino acids, and where does this R come from? So let us quickly revise the concepts of amino acids so that we can solve this question. Okay. So amino acids are basically called as the substituted methanes. All right. We call amino acids as substituted methanes. And why that we call it that way, we'll figure out now. Amino acids are basically molecules that contain functional groups like NH2 and COOH, which is the carboxylic group, and the other one is the amine group, on the alpha carbon. मतलब alpha carbon का मतलब होता है that any carbon which is next to the functional group, which is next to the functional group, is said to be our alpha carbon. So basically amino acids are molecule in which our amine group and our carboxyl group is present on the alpha carbon. यानी कि एक ही कार्बन पे मेरा अमाइन ग्रुप भी प्रेजेंट है एंड दी alpha and the carboxyl group is also present on the same carbon. But R अभी भी तो नहीं आया, then what is that R? So we'll come to our point. And now coming to this केस को मीथेन सब्स्टिट्यूटेड, मीथेन क्यों बोला गया? तो मीथेन का अगर हम स्ट्रक्चर देखें तो इट इज़ मेड अप ऑफ 4 हाइड्रोजन एटम्स, CH4, ऑलराइट. तो इसमें से एक पोजीशन तो NH2 ने ऑक्यूपाई कर लिया, दूसरे ने COOH ने कर लिया कार्बोक्सिल ग्रुप में. तो एक हाइड्रोजन अभी भी हमारे पास पेंडिंग है, तो उसको हम यहाँ जोड़ देते हैं. वी हैव आवर हाइड्रोजन, ऑलराइट. देन one of the H groups is removed and here we add our R group. Here we will add our R group. इसीलिए इसको कहते हैं substituted methane, क्योंकि just like a structure of methane जहाँ पे 4 कार्बन एटम प्रेजेंट थे, 4 हाइड्रोजन एटम प्रेजेंट थे एक ही कार्बन पे, सेम उसी तरह amino acids में we have 4 different molecules which are attached to the same carbon atom. That is why we call it a substituted methane. So here comes our R group जिसके basis पे question था. So basically an amino acid is composed of amino group, carboxyl group, and then we have our R group. Now the nature of our NCERT writes that the physical and chemical nature of amino acids are determined by these 3 factors, which are the R group, NH2 amine group and the carboxyl group. So इन तीनों के presence से ही जो physical और chemical नेचर है अमीनो एसिड का वो डिटरमाइन होता है. एंड दिस आर ग्रुप इज सेड टू बी वेरिएबल इन एवरी अमीनो एसिड. आर ग्रुप इज जस्ट अ फंक्शनल ग्रुप विच विल बी प्रेजेंट ऑन द अमीनो एसिड एंड बेस्ड ऑन दिस आर ग्रुप देयर विल बी डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ अमीनो एसिड्स. All right. So we have different types of amino acids because our R group is a variable group. We also say it that it is a variable group, and the nature of amino acid, whether it is acidic, basic or neutral, is determined by these 2 functional groups. Whether it will be acidic or basic or neutral will be determined by the number of amino and carboxyl group present in the amino acid. So to understand it better, let us take the structure of one of the amino acids and try to understand this. So we see that we have alanine and serine. यहाँ पे हमारा carboxyl group है, यहाँ पे भी carboxyl group है. Then we have our amine group, यहाँ भी amine group है. Then we have a hydrogen, यहाँ पे भी hydrogen है. So now here comes the role of R group. Okay, R group, which was the variable group, is of 2 different types, an alanine and serine. जैसे alanine में हमारे पास एक methyl group है, which is the R group, whereas in serine we have an alcohol. And to be specific, it is hydroxymethyl group, which is the R group present in serine. And these figures are given in the NCERT, and this information is also present in the NCERT. Whatever I have discussed so far, all of it is written in the NCERT in between the lines. So nothing was beyond which is not there in the NCERT कि आपको लगे कि शायद आपके लिए relevant नहीं है. So please listen carefully, and in exams you might find questions based on these tiny concepts. All right. So here we were going to talk about कि acidic और basic कैसे decide हो रहा था. So it was based on the number of amino groups. All right. So यहाँ we can see we have one carboxyl group and one amine group, which means we have equal number of amine and carboxyl group. So we classify alanine as a neutral amino acid. It is a neutral amino acids. All right. अगर हमारा amine group is more in number as compared to the carboxyl group, then it is said to be a basic amino acid. Whereas if the amine group is less in number as compared to the carboxyl group, then it is said to be a acidic amino acid. And equal वाला case तो हमने देख ही लिया. If it is equal, then it is a neutral amino acids. Now in our NCERT various names are mentioned for the amino acids. So we have valine. Now by looking at the picture, can you make out whether it will be a basic amino acid or a acidic amino acid? Please let me know in the comment section. Then we have leucine as well. And we can see that we have various R groups or different R groups in each of the amino acids. Here we have the R group. Then we have a tyrosine, which is, now our NCERT writes that there are 3 aromatic amino acids, which means कि एक अमीनो एसिड के स्ट्रक्चर में एक बेंजीन रिंग और या फिर एक साइक्लिक रिंग प्रेजेंट है. Alright, so for that we have 3 examples given, which is the tyrosine, tryptophan and phenylalanine. So we say that along with this straight chain, we have our R group, which is our R group here is an aromatic group. Here we can, this is my R group here. Here this is my R group. And my R group in these amino acids are aromatic or aromatic groups or ring containing groups. All right. And I can see someone has said that valine is an acidic amino acid, which is incorrect, as number of carboxyl and amine group are same in valine, so we'll categorize as neutral amino acid. So now we move back to our question, which was to identify the R group present in alanine, and we saw that the R group present in alanine is X here should be methyl, whereas in serine the R group present was a hydroxymethyl. And in the options given, I can see my first option states the same, therefore the right answer will be option 1, and we'll straight away eliminate the other options. So this was all about amino acids, its nature, how it is categorized, and we also talked about the aromatic amino acids. So all these concepts are important when it comes to your NEET exam. All right. So now our question is a diagram based question, and I can see that it pertains to the chapter of excretion, and there is a figure. So let us quickly see the figure which is given in the NCERT, because it is the same figure you can see, where we have our efferent arteriole, then we have our efferent arteriole, Bowman's capsule, and the PCT. So basically in the question, all you were supposed to do was to identify these label parts and choose the correct option. Okay, but let us quickly talk about these in brief. So basically, the figure that you see on your screen is a diagram of Malpighian body, or we also call it as the renal corpuscle. All right. So basically in humans, or I should say kidneys, are made up of tiny structures, or the structural or functional unit of kidney is nephron. And nephron has two parts, which is the glomerulus and the renal tubules. All right. So what is glomerulus exactly? So basically glomerulus is formed by the efferent arterioles. In the figure you can see that we have the efferent arteriole, and these efferent arteriole is giving rise to a tuft of capillaries which is forming the Bowman's capsule. The figure that you see here, the red color mesh-like structure, this mesh-like structure, this is the glomerulus, and it is formed by the efferent arteriole. We call it as the tuft of capillaries. Tuft of capillaries. You can see कि देखने में कैसे गुच्छे जैसा लग रहा है. That is why we call it as a tuft of capillaries. So glomerulus is formed by the efferent arteriole, and our NCERT further also writes it as that efferent arteriole is an extension of renal artery. So renal artery से efferent arteriole निकला. Efferent arteriole further gives rise to capillaries, which are known as the glomerulus. All right, and this glomerulus will further converge. The capillaries of this glomerulus will come together to form the efferent arteriole. All right. So we had the renal artery, which gave rise to efferent arteriole. Efferent arteriole से बना हमारा glomerulus. Glomerulus will further form the efferent arteriole. All right. So efferent का मतलब हमें पता है लेकर आना. So efferent brings blood to the glomerulus, and efferent arteriole, it brings the oxygenated blood to the glomerulus, and efferent arteriole takes away the blood from the glomerulus. All right. And if you see closely, we can see that there is a difference in the diameter of efferent arteriole when compared to the efferent arteriole. All right. So the efferent arteriole has a wider diameter as compared to the efferent arteriole. All right. And this diameter, difference in the size of diameter, helps in creating a pressure difference. It helps in creating a pressure difference which will help in the process of ultrafiltration which takes place in glomerulus. We all know that for urine formation, 3 steps are involved, which is the ultrafiltration, tubular secretion and tubular reabsorption. So the first step, which is the ultrafiltration, it takes place in the glomerulus, and this process occurs due to pressure difference which is created by the difference in the diameter of these arterioles. There are other factors as well, but it is one of the factors which runs the process of ultrafiltration as it provides pressure difference. All right. So this was one of the points on which you can be asked questions. Okay. So the other structure that I see here is the Bowman's capsule. So basically a renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like structure. You can see this is a double-walled cup-like structure, and it is said that our renal tubules begins with Bowman's capsule, and Bowman's capsule has an inner wall and the outer wall. All right, and in the inner walls of Bowman's capsule, the squamous epithelial cells get specialized to form podocytes, or I would say filtration slits, or basically podocytes are cells, modified cells of squamous epithelium of the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule, which get arranged in an intricate manner to form filtration slits, or we also call it as slit pores, so that the process of filtration can occur. All right. So this is one of the questions which is often asked, that what is the site of podocyte? So it is the inner wall of Bowman's capsule, and it is a modification of which type of epithelium? So it is the modification of the squamous epithelial cells of the Bowman's capsule. All right, and then we can see we have PCT. So PCT is the renal tubule, and we all know that maximum absorption, or 70 to 80% of absorption of nutrients and other substances takes place in PCT itself, and it is lined by cuboidal epithelium which has a brush bordered type of appearance due to the presence of microvilli on it. All right. So this was some of the important points when we look at the structure of the Malpighian corpuscle. So as discussed, A here should be efferent arteriole, D is efferent arteriole, B is the Bowman's capsule, and C is the PCT. And in the options given, I can see my correct match is option 2, as A is efferent arteriole, B is Bowman's capsule, C is PCT, and D is efferent arteriole. So we will straight away eliminate the other options and we'll reach a final answer. And by looking at this question, I realize that it is important that we learn the diagrams of NCERT as well, because it was a very simple question. All we had to do is to remember those labelings. Okay, and we cannot afford to lose on such simple questions. All right. So now we move on to our next question, and it pertains to the chapter of locomotion and movement. And it states the number of carpals in a left forelimb of humans is equal to the total number of which bones in humans. All right. So basically we are talking left forelimb के carpal में. तो carpal पहले होता क्या है? So let us quickly revise the concept of skeletal system to answer this question. All right. I am able to walk right in front of you. You are able to sit properly. All of these is facilitated by this skeletal system. So basically the skeletal system present in our body provides a framework to our body, and it helps in movement, it provides protection, and there are a lot of important functions which are associated with the skeletal system which is present in our body. Alright. So in humans we have our endoskeleton, and based on the location, endoskeleton is divided into two categories, which is the axial skeletal system, and then we have the appendicular skeletal system. Alright. So the axial skeletal system, axial, you can imagine that in an axis. Alright. So our axial skeletal system consists of the skull bones, then we have the vertebral column, then we have the ribs, and so these are the components of our axial skeletal system. Alright. And our skull includes the facial bones, it includes the cranial bones, and it also includes our ear ossicles. Alright. So our skull bone is composed of these three components, whereas the appendicular system is composed of the girdle bones, which is the pectoral and the pelvic girdle, and it is composed of the limb bones. Alright. So the limb bones will obviously include both the forelimb and the hind limbs. Alright. Now on the screen you can see the image. Okay. So here if we talk about the forelimbs, we have different bones associated with our forelimbs. Alright. And they are radius, we have the ulna, we have the phalanges, then we have the metacarpals, and then we have the carpals when we talk about the forelimbs. Alright. Whereas when we talk about our hind limbs, we have the femur, which is also known as the longest bone in the human body, and it is also known as the thigh bone. Alright. Then we have the tibia, we have the fibula, and again here just like metacarpals, we have metacarpals, then we have phalanges just like our forelimbs, but here instead of carpals we have tarsals. Alright. So my phalanges are basically the digits present in our hands. Okay. So my fingers are composed of phalanges. So if we count closely, we have 14 phalanges. In the thumb we have 2 bones, and in the other fingers we have, you can see the linings, and you can calculate that we have each finger made up of 3 bones except the thumb, which is made up of 2 bones only. So my phalanges are my digits, and they are made up of 14 bones, and you can count it as I repeat myself. Okay. Then we have the metacarpals, which is the palm bones. All right, my palm is made up of metacarpals. Okay, and my palm has 5 bones, which makes it. Okay, so metacarpals are 5 in number. Then we come to carpals. So basically my wrist is made up of, so my wrist is made up of carpals, and they are 8 in number. All right. So metacarpal is the palm bone. Metacarpal is the palm bone. Metacarpal is the palm bone, whereas carpal is the wrist bone. And in the figure that you can see on your screen, this is the wrist bone. All right, and you can see 8 different bones have been colored differently. All right, and we can see we have 8 separate bones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. All right, and they have various names. When we talk in terms of NEET exams, these names are not important. We just need to know the number of these bones. So we saw that our wrist bone is made up of 8 bones. All right, and similarly, as we discussed the other parts which constitute our skeletal system, we had our skull bone and the facial bone as well. So our skull bone was made up of cranial bones, and we can see the cranial bones labeled here in the picture. And if we count, in total we have 8 cranial bones. All right, the numbers here signify whether they are paired or unpaired. All right, this is also important when we talk in terms of NEET exam, because you might be asked whether or which bone is paired in when we talk about the cranial bones. Similarly goes with the facial bones. We saw that our skull bone is made up of facial bone, cranial bone and the ear ossicles, which are 6 in number. We discussed about ear ossicles in our last class itself in detail, where we talked about incus, malleus and stapes. So we had 6 ear ossicles. When we talk about the facial bones, we can see we have 14 facial bones. 14 facial bones. All right. And as we talked about our hind limbs, which are made up of different bones, and one of them was tarsal, which is also known as the ankle bone. And in the image we can see that we have 7 ankle bones. Means that 7 bones join together to form our ankles. All right, and again these are the various names of these bones, but it is not important when we talk in terms of NEET exams. So this was the brief of the skeletal system which is present in our body and the number of bones which constitute those parts. All right, now coming back to our question, we were supposed to answer the number of metacarpals which are present in our left forelimb, which means we are just talking about our one hand. So we saw that we have 8 carpals or the wrist bone, and we need to find out that it is equal to which of the given bones. All right, so we saw that we have 14 facial bones, therefore option 1 cannot be the right answer. And we also saw that we have 8 cranial bones, therefore option 2 again cannot be the right answer. Now coming to skull bones, we also discussed that skull bones are made up of facial bones, the cranial bones and the ear ossicles. So here we have 14 bones, then we have 8 bones, and then we have 6 bones. So obviously it is far beyond 8, all right. Therefore skull bone obviously cannot be the right answer. Okay. Okay, sorry dear students, I made a mistake. So we saw that our cranial bones are 8 in number, and just like our palm bones, all right. Therefore our right answer should be cranial bone itself, all right. And we will see why the other options are not correct. So we discussed skull bones include these 3 bones, and therefore these 3 bones, the skull bone cannot be the right answer. Here it is an important point to note that in our old NCERT, we would also include hyoid as the skull bone. But the latest update which has been given from the NCERT itself states that hyoid will not be included as a part of skull bone, all right. So in total now we consider that we have only 28 skull bones, all right, whereas earlier we used to consider that we have 29 skull bone which also included hyoid, all right. So just in case if you are not aware, you should know that hyoid now is not included under the category of skull bones. Our NCERT, the updated NCERT just states that hyoid is a U-shaped bone which is present at the base of the buccal cavity, all right. And as we saw, the number of tarsals in each hind limb is 7. We saw a giant diagram of a foot, all right. Therefore option 4 is incorrect, and as discussed, our right answer should be option 2. All right. So it was a tricky question. I would categorize it as a tricky question because we need to remember the number of bones which are associated with each part, the number of bones, all right. So now we move on to our next question, and it is about convergent evolution and from the chapter evolution. So dear students, evolution is also an important topic from which questions are often asked in the NEET exam, all right. So here we need to complete the analogy with respect to convergent evolution, and we can see we have various names given. So let us quickly discuss the concept of convergent evolution, and to understand it better, let us also quickly discuss the concept of divergent evolution. We'll study both of them parallelly. So basically what happens in convergent evolution is that, let us suppose that in a place we have 2 organisms from different origin coming together. Let us suppose it is coming to a place A. Here it is a mammal, whereas here it is an insect, all right. Both of them came to a place A where they faced a similar challenge and they were supposed to live in air, all right. So what this arthropod and this mammal will do, they will develop wings for that, all right. So both of them developed wings just for the better survival. So what happened here, we have different origin, all right, and both of them developed wings. So on the surface level these wings look similar, all right, they are morphologically similar, but they are going to be anatomically different. They are going to be anatomically different, but they are doing the same function, and we often call that convergent evolution give rise to analogous structures or analogous organs, all right. Now coming to divergent evolution, what happens is, let us suppose we have a place B here, and here one of the species was living, but it started facing certain challenges. So it moved out of this site and they started moving to different areas. And since they started moving out, they began forming different structures or developing different adaptations so that they can survive better in this different niche. Alright, let us suppose this is niche 1, niche 2, niche 3 and niche 4. Alright, so basically from one common point or from one ancestor, different species were formed. Alright, and they adapted different characteristics to survive in different areas. So that is why we call it as the divergent evolution, because they are diverging to different places or they are diverging in different directions. Alright, let us suppose it developed wings, it developed forelimbs, it developed a tail or whatsoever. Alright, so basically we have a common origin and all tail, wings, forelimb, they will all look morphologically different. There is a morphological difference, but anatomically, since a similar structure diverged into or got modified into different direction due to adaptation to different needs, they will have anatomical similarity, and we also call them as the homologous organs. Alright, so this was the basic about convergent and divergent evolution. Now when we remember our question, it was based on some animals. So where does that come into picture? So basically on the screen you can see a diagram of marsupials radiation. So basically what is happening here is we have a ancestral stock. Alright, this is the ancestral stock, and it is diverging in different direction to give rise to different species. Alright, and we often call it as adaptive radiation because they are radiating in different direction to adapt to different needs. So what happened in Australia was the marsupials, these Australian marsupials were already existing. Alright, and then these placental mammals came later into picture. They later invaded the Australian islands. So what these placental mammals did, they tried to adapt to the places where these animals were already living. So to survive in the niche in which these animals were already living, these placental mammals underwent modification and they tried to evolve into that similar category of animal. For instance, the wolf, the Tasmanian wolf, wolf that we have under Australian marsupial was a carnivore and it was a very scary predator, I would say. So when placental mammals arrived, what wolf did was it tried to adapt to the characteristics which the Tasmanian wolf exhibited, so that along with the Tasmanian wolf, it can also utilize the resources which was available in that particular niche. So basically, if we see these two individually, we will say that it is undergoing divergent evolution. But as our NCERT writes that if in a given area more than one adaptive radiation takes place, then we say that both of them show convergent evolution with respect to each other. So if we compare these two, both of them together are showing convergent evolution, whereas separately they are showing divergent evolution. All right. So now moving back to our question. So we were supposed to find the organism which is showing convergent evolution. So for flying phalanger, we have the flying squirrel. All right. For bobcat, we have the Tasmanian cat. And for spotted cuscus, we have lemur. and koala bear is an irrelevant option as it is one of the marsupial itself. Therefore, a right answer will be spotted cuscus. Alright. So, this marks the end of the discussion. I hope you will find this session useful, and all the best for the upcoming NEET exam. Please hold on to for more sessions as we have our esteemed botany faculties joining you soon for discussing the portion of the botany part. Alright. So, all the best and see you soon again. Bye.